Welcome back. So today I'm going to be taking you through my journey with SSRIs. I'll tell you exactly why I went on them. I'll take you through the process of going on them, what I discovered while I was taking them. I'll take you through the taper process, and also why I will never ever take them again. Now, really important to remember that when I'm doing this video, none of it is genuine medical advice. I'm not a doctor. It's all just my opinions, my beliefs, my experiences with everything, and how I feel being on them and off them. Right, so I was going to make this video like loads of different scenes and take us to loads of different places and shit like that, but let's be 100% honest, right? If you're watching this, it's because you want to hear the SSRI conversation. So I'm just going to have it. I'm just going to kind of talk to you about the experience and the journey. So the reason I went on SSRIs isn't because I had social anxiety. Now, a lot of you will know that I used to struggle really badly with social anxiety, but that wasn't the reason why I went on them. I worked with a psychologist, not a therapist, like an actual psychologist, for around a year. And the social anxiety obviously improved massively, started the business in November 2023. October 2023, I should say, technically, because I had 10 days before the gym had actually opened. And then the gym had opened in the middle of November. The months leading up to that, like leading up to the actual business starting. So I'd started with a psychologist in around April. I'd been through quite a lot of big personal life changes at the time. So things had looked very different compared to how they had done for sort of 3 or 4 years before that. I'll not go too much into detail on that side of stuff, but there was a lot of really big life changes for me at that time. And obviously then going to see a psychologist and trying to break free of this social anxiety that I'd struggled with for so long was obviously very taxing from a psychological standpoint. Now, at the time, I also worked as a car salesman, and I fucking hated it. I absolutely hated the job. There was a couple of like good people there that I'm still mates with, but for the most part, it was an incredibly toxic environment. Surrounded by a lot of people who just wanted to fucking drink and do drugs, and just not the sort of people that I wanted to be around at all. And I didn't really fit in that well there, to be completely honest. And I also hated the job in general because realistically, as a car salesman, like, let's face it, you're up there with fucking traffic wardens. Like, nobody likes a car salesman. You're essentially trying to con people into paying fucking essentially a mortgage payment these days for a car that you know is going to absolutely skint them, that you know is not worth it, but you'll get them in on the board and you'll get the money off them by any means necessary, which is pretty much why I stopped selling cars towards the end of that, because I just didn't believe in what I was selling. And I am the sort of person where if I don't believe in the thing that I'm selling, I'm not going to try and fucking force it through somebody, like onto somebody. But yeah, the last couple of months of that job, you know, like I had fucking like directors coming down and fucking screaming in my face and shit before I left. Not going to mention any names there, because I'll get in trouble on social media. People have mentioned it before, but I've had, you know, like fucking directors of VW and that coming down and screaming in my fucking face in a closed office, telling me I'm just taking up a seat and things like that. It was a very stressful environment for me to be in, but for some reason that year, I just never really took any sort of holidays. Now, I would have days off, but I never took any sort of extended period of time off, and I had pretty much 11 months in a row in that job, fucking hating every single day, working 5 days a week. I didn't really take any extended time off that year at all. And the constant stress of that, and the constant stress of obviously then doing my course on the side of that, the stress of having to kind of create a bit of a new identity for myself, and the stress of going to work, see a psychologist and work on the social anxiety and that sort of stuff. It was a lot of build-up of stress that at the time, I didn't really understand the way that stress worked. And I didn't understand that if you let it build up and build up and build up and you don't deal with it, eventually at one point you're just going to fucking snap. And I didn't know that that's the way that stress worked at the time. And in November 2023, right after the business had started, so I had 2 weeks in the gym, and then on the 2nd of December, I went to Thailand with my friends, and that was already booked in like a year before. When we went to Thailand, full transparency, all we did was we vaped from fucking first thing in the morning from these like dodgy Thai vapes that we had. I smoked a shit ton of weed, like literally morning till night while I was over there, because it is legal in Thailand, and we just drank like pretty much from the afternoon onwards. And like going straight into it, we then obviously had a really bad sleeping pattern. Like we were literally fucking barely sleeping at all, plus the jet lag. plus the bad nutrition, plus the fact that I wasn't training, plus obviously the stress of everything previous. And at this time, guys, like, I signed up 2 clients in that first 2 weeks of my business, and both of those clients only paid me £50 each, because I didn't really have the confidence to charge any more than that, and especially the fact that I was then away for 2. It was basically almost like a deposit. I said, look, I'll give you a program, you can be uploaded onto the app, I'll give you, you know, everything that you need to, and then when I come back in December, we'll kind of like kickstart from there, sort of thing. I actually ended up working with one of those clients for around 2 years, and he's actually a very good mate of mine. I've literally just trained with him in a gym around 2 hours ago. Excuse me. He's a very good friend of mine now. He was only the second client that I ever signed up. Well, like I said, that I ended up working with him for fucking years. Point being, anyway, I'd gone to Thailand with money that I'd saved up over the year while working as a car salesman, and while I was away, like I said, I put my body under a lot of stress. There'd obviously been a lot of stuff going on before that, and leading into that, I was doing a very aggressive fat loss phase as well, which was obviously again another stress on the body. I didn't really understand how stress worked at all at the time. And when I was out in Thailand, we went to PP Islands, and I basically decided to go off and leave my friends, right? At about 12 o'clock. And the only thing that I really remember from that night was I've got a screenshot of my phone. I was so pissed and stoned, and we'd been doing balloons as well, full transparency. We'd been fucking having joints and shit all night. We'd been drinking vodka all night, like having those big fish bucket things. Like, I didn't even know where the fuck I was. And I left my mates, and the last thing that I have from that night is a picture of me playing pool with somebody. And then I decided to just walk back home from the bar. And I had a screenshot on my phone, an accidental screen recording, I should say, and it said I had 1% left on my phone. I took a picture of loads of cats on the beach, and then that was all I had. Right? So I was stuck on an island, not even on mainland Thailand. There was no taxis on this island because the island was so small that there was no roads. So nobody could actually take me home. I couldn't just say, like, I couldn't just get in a fucking taxi and be like, can you take me home? Because there's no taxis there. So anyways, I started walking down the beach for 2 hours. And when I walked down there, I basically at one point thought that I'd found my hotel. It wasn't my hotel. I walked in there, realised that I couldn't get back out because the gate was kind of open, and I walked in, realised that it wasn't mine, had to climb over the fence, then jumped off of the fence, smacked my head off of the sand, and then give myself a concussion. So I was pissed, stoned, had been sucking balloons all night. This was probably about 3-4 o'clock in the morning at this point. And I then obviously concussed myself. I walked up to 2 people that were sweeping up after the bars had just shut, and I said, I'm at a Patong, or whatever the hotel was called. I'm at a Patong, might have been the mainland hotel actually, whatever the hotel was called at the time. And I said the name of the hotel, and he just went, oh no. He's like, you're on the wrong side of the island. So I was like, where do I have to go? How far? And he went, about an hour that way. So I'm on the wrong fucking side of the island at this point, with no phone. I had I think I had the equivalent of about £3 left in my wallet because I'd spent all my money. No phone, barely any money, not a fucking clue where I am, no ability to get a taxi and go back to the hotel. So I had to find my own way back, right? So I started walking down the beach. He just said, like, follow the beach. And anyways, I started to potentially recognise a couple of places, and I ended up finding a 7-Eleven. And I walked in there, and there was this, like, Australian girl who seemed dead nice. She just said, you look like you're lost. You look like you've had a bit of a bad night. Are you okay? I was like, yeah, I'm lost. I'm looking for this hotel. Do you know where it is? And she was like, oh, look, I'll get you like a cheese toastie and like a bottle of water. So she gets me the cheese toastie and a bottle of water, and I kind of like revived myself. And so then she's like, oh, look, like, I know where your hotel is. I come here all the time, like, because obviously fucking Thailand's not very far away from Australia. Like, oh, we'll just go, like, chill on the beach for, like, an hour or something, and then we'll go back. So anyways, I just went and, like, sat on the beach for an hour. Turns out that girl was just on mushrooms. That's why she was being so nice, and she didn't have a fucking clue where my hotel was. She ended up just walking off, right? Anyways, when I was down at the beach, I just walked into the water, and in Thailand they have long-tail boats. And the long-tail boat, basically, the anchor is very, very sharp and it's very close to the shore, and I didn't know that. Now, at the time, I just kind of thought that I'd grazed my foot a little bit, and it turns out I'd actually sliced my foot open, but because basically I'd walked back over the sand, all of the sand had got inside of the wound and kind of stopped it from bleeding badly. And I put my shoes back on, eventually found the room. I didn't get back to the room until about 6 a.m, right? Went to bed, and then I woke up at about 8 o'clock in the morning. The whole bed was fucking covered in blood. The whole bed was covered in blood. And I said to my mate, look, I need to go to the hospital. Ended up, anyways, long story short, went to this hospital, paid £1,000 to get out. They gave me 7 different types of medication. And I took all these medications, and obviously went back to the UK about 5 days later. Went to my doctor, and my doctor literally picked all the medications up. He put like 3 of them to the side and just went, I don't even know what the fuck they are. I don't even know what they've given you. And around a couple of days later, because this was just before Christmas, it was Christmas Eve when this happened, I took a double scoop of ABE and I had a panic attack, right? Because my body was so fucking stressed. And basically what had happened is I'd had such a bad reaction to all the stress from the previous year, or the year that obviously I was currently in, but from everything else that had happened. And then they'd given me all these medications. We didn't even know what the fuck they were. They also give me 4 different types of antibiotics. Now, I'm not going to get into the actual ins and outs of how antibiotics affect your health, but they completely fucking ruined my health. Completely ruined my health. And the day that I had that panic attack was essentially my body breaking, basically. And for months, I genuinely think for around 9 months, the fatigue, the depressive symptoms, the anxiety that I was having constant panic attacks. I'd never had a panic attack in my life before. And obviously I just started my business. Just started the fucking business. I was like, I mean, literally I think it was 2 shifts or 2 days after I'd obviously had that panic attack, so Boxing Day, I went in and I did a spin class and I fell asleep standing up because I was so fucking tired. My body was not reacting well to whatever the fuck had gone on, and this went on for months. And I went back to my psychologist, and obviously I was struggling because, again, I was just getting out of my comfort zone with the social anxiety, starting the business. I was doing classes, I was, taking on clients and things like that, and I was always having to cancel on my clients, and I felt fucking terrible because I literally couldn't get myself out of bed. Like, I would train once or twice per week because my body couldn't handle it. Like, my body couldn't handle the training at all. I would do one hard training session and I would be a fucking write-off for days. Like, my legs would be fucking dead if I did half a leg session. I could barely sleep, or if I did sleep, sometimes it would end up being like a 15-hour sleep. I would literally sleep all fucking day. I could not get rid of this fatigue. Didn't matter how much I looked after my gut health, how much I got myself outside, how much I de-stressed, how much fucking mindfulness I did, whatever, like, nothing would work, and the anxiety and the depression was fucking terrible. And I got to a point with my psychologist where she just turned around and said, look, John, like, I can't help you. You're going to have to take some form of medication. Which leads me to the medication side of stuff. Now, what the experience that I then had was, for the first 8 weeks, I basically just experienced nothing. Like, nothing really happened. I took 50 milligrams of sertraline. Now, I'm going to say this now. I went to the doctors and I was shocked. Fucking shocked by how easy it was to get antidepressants. Very, very shocked. I literally went in to a doctor about a month before. I'd spoken to somebody else and just said, look, I'm not really feeling too good, and I didn't really know what I was hoping for that day. I didn't want the medication, and I told them that I didn't want it. And I then went back a month later after my psychologist had recommended it, and I literally walked in and went, look, I've been feeling pretty depressed for the last 2 months, 3 months, whatever it had been. This has happened. And she just went, oh, cool, I'll just get you 50 milligrams of sertraline. It's around the corner. Just wrote me a prescription and sent me on my way. She didn't ask me about my nutrition. She didn't ask me about my sleep. She didn't ask me about my lifestyle. She didn't ask me about exercise. She just went, 50 milligrams of sertraline, there you go. And just kicked me out. I was in there for about 5 minutes. Right, and this is the kind of point of the video that I want to get onto. The fact that I was able to just walk in and just get sertraline, an antidepressant, within 5 fucking minutes, and nobody had asked me about my lifestyle, nobody had asked me about my nutrition, nobody had asked me about the fact that I went to a psychologist, they just gave me a fucking pill because they just wanted me to get out the room, right? Which is now going to lead me on to kind of the experience that I had. So as I said, I had no reaction really for the first 8 weeks, and then after around 8 weeks, I started to feel a bit different. I didn't feel good really, but my emotions were incredibly blunted, and I just basically, all that meant is that I just didn't react as much to things as in anxiety or depression as I used to, because my emotions to everything were just blunted. Even if it was a good thing, my emotions were blunted. Now, around the time that I took the antidepressants, I started working with my coach, Ali. Now, the reason why I started working with Ali was because I'd seen him in a seminar, around 4 or 5 months before, and I knew that he was very well educated on stress and hormonal function and gut health and things like that. And I just said, look, mate, like you train the way that I like to train. You're a bodybuilding style coach, like Ori is a bodybuilding coach, and I know that you're really well educated on like gut health and hormonal health. And I'd started reading up about it, and I'd realised that a lot of the reason that my anxiety and depression was probably there was because I'd taken all these antibiotics and it had fucking destroyed my gut. Again, I'll not go too much into a deep dive in that because that is a conversation for another day. That could be like a fucking half an hour video in itself, but it basically ruins you, it destroys your gut microbiome. Now, 90 to 95% of your serotonin is made in the gut, 50% of your dopamine is made in the gut, 75% of your immune system is made in the gut. So I had, like, my gut health was fucked. Like, full transparency, I'm not PC. I was shitting liquid like fucking 6 or 7 times a day. Minimum. Right? I was going to the toilet like every hour and a half, every 2 hours. Something like that. Which is really not a good indicator that you're very healthy. Now, as me and Ali started to work together and I started to learn a lot more about gut health and hormonal health and stress reduction and things like this, which is why I'm decently educated on it now. I've also done like his mentorship for coaches, so I can learn more about that side of stuff. Basically, over the course of about, I would say 6 months, I started to feel a little bit better. And then around a year later, I would probably say I felt like, you know, nigh on 100% again. And like I said, for me, it would just blunted my emotions. But around about a year later, I started to realise that, you know, I can probably start to come off these now. I can regulate my emotions a lot better just from an actual reaction standpoint or how reactive I am to certain emotions. So it's probably time to start tapering. So in March of 2025, I then started to taper. And then I tapered for around 4 months. Came off them very, very slowly. I bought a pill cutter. Ali's a bodybuilder, so he's very educated on that. Recommended that I get a pill cutter, and I got one. And the pill cutter, basically, I just got like the 50 milligram. I snapped it in half, took 25. I think I took 25 for like maybe like 6 weeks to mitigate the symptoms. A lot of doctors will tell you to like do it really slowly, and then you take like one every 2 days, then one every 3 days. Guys, just go on Amazon, buy a fucking pill cutter, right? This is, in my opinion, this is the best way to do it. Go on Amazon, buy a pill cutter for $5, snap whatever, or take whatever it is that you're on at the minute, which is like, you know, you'll be able to take half of that and probably just snap it in half. Then I halved it again when I felt like I'd kind of settled again, then I halved it again, then I halved it again, then I halved it again. And that went on until about July time. Now, what I would say is the experience of coming off them wasn't that bad in the sense that I didn't get like any crazy fucking chills. I didn't really get like really bad insomnia. For the first time that I went from 50 to 25, I got like a couple of brain zaps and things like that. It was nothing crazy, nothing too scary at all. Just a brain zap is basically where you kind of have that feeling where you're going to walk down a step and you miss the step and you get that like that. That's pretty much what that was. That wasn't even that fucking bad at all. And then, yeah, that was pretty much the main symptom that I had. I had like a little bit of night sweats for a couple of days, and then that was pretty much it. It was the only effects that I really found is having to then deal with the actual emotions again was very strange. Having emotion come back was very strange. It made it a lot harder to make decisions, conscious decisions. It activated my fight or flight system quite a lot. I was making a lot of decisions that I probably shouldn't have, and I made a lot of decisions last year that I probably wouldn't have if I was not coming off the medication at the time. I'll not go too much into like that side of stuff, but I made a lot of decisions that I shouldn't have last year. Now looking back at it, now that everything's kind of settled and I feel like I've really kind of got myself back to where I was from an emotional standpoint, like I made a lot of bad decisions last year, just in my opinion, largely because of the fact that I was coming off the medication. It did severely affect the way that I kind of thought and felt last year. I didn't know how to regulate my emotions, which is going to kind of lead me on to the next point. Now, I didn't start to feel quote unquote normal again until around September or October. And obviously, as I said, I started tapering off them in like March. I'll probably even say, to be honest, I didn't feel 100% right until even January this year. It took me a long time to start to feel back to myself, for everything to start regulating itself again. And one thing that I have noticed, and I'm not sure if it's just because I've learned to regulate my emotions better, but I don't quite get the excitement that I used to. Now, a lot of people who've taken SSRIs report having emotional blunting in the long term as well. It's not like a super amount of, like a lot of blunting, but I don't get like excited the way that I used to. So for things like holidays, for things like grow my business, for things like, you know, potentially looking at buying a house or getting new things or doing that. I'm not sure if it's because of the medication or if it's because I've learned to, one, I've had a lot more life experience now, and I understand that like getting certain things will not make you happy. So I don't think I get that level of excitement for those things anymore because I'm not as naive as I used to be. But I just don't tend to get those like excited feelings as much as I used to when I was you know, on the medication. But like I said, that could also just be emotional regulation. Now the point that I want to get to is, do I think SSRIs are needed for most people? No, I fucking don't. In my opinion, right, taking SSRIs and not doing the inner work, not learning to emotionally regulate yourself, not actually understanding yourself and taking accountability for the reactions that you have to your own emotions, running away from emotions and being scared of them all the time, right? I think, somebody just getting in the car next to me there. I think not learning to do those things but then still taking medication is literally the equivalent of basically being sweaty as fuck and stinking, right? And just putting deodorant on your armpits instead of going in the shower, right? Like, you might not be able to smell what's underneath, or you might not be able to you might not have to show what's underneath, but trust me, you know that it's still there. And in my opinion, if you go on medication, it's not a long-term fix. Like, it doesn't actually help you. It can be used essentially, for an example, is, let's say for an example, you have like knee surgery, right? And you're going to do the rehab on your knee after you've had the surgery. Now, you might take like anti-inflammation medication to be able to do the rehab for your knee, right? And then once the rehab's done, then you can come off of the anti-inflammation medication. It should be done if you're going to take them at all, which, again, I don't think most people need them. Like, I think that's the way that they should be used. They should be used as a way of being able to deal with the inner work even more easily, so that by the time that you come off them, you've actually learned to emotionally regulate yourself. But the issue is, most people go to the doctor and go, I've been feeling anxious for a couple of months, I'm going to go to the doctor and get some SSRIs. Then they end up on the SSRIs, they don't even kick in for 2 months anyway, they never actually learn how to emotionally regulate themselves, and then they say that they want to come off them, which means that they've then got another couple of months of fucking torture, because they're going to have to then learn to deal with all the emotions again, but they've never done any of the inner work. Either that, or you just stay on the long term and you feel emotionally blunt for the rest of your life, but you still get the feelings of being anxious and depressed. Because I know so many people, and I've worked with so many clients that have come off of them when we've just improved their lifestyle and improved their health and improved their ability to emotionally regulate. Because realistically, as I said, 99% of people don't need them. Doctors will put you on these medications very quickly when you go in to see them, because they don't want to give you the fucking time of day. And the issue is, because of the lifestyle that we currently live, like everybody's constantly on the screens, a lot of people don't exercise, a lot of people don't look after their health, a lot of people drink all the time, which again will destroy your gut microbiome. Like, because of the lifestyle that a lot of people live, the doctors know for a fact that they're not going to get you to change your lifestyle. That's not their job. They're not going to be able to get you to do that. And if they're going to send you to a therapist, one, most of the therapists are shit anyway, because they don't challenge you on your feelings. They just validate your feelings. And then you get 6 hours of fucking therapy and they just tell you to go. That's not going to do anything for anybody. It's not. Sorry to say that. And this is all coming from my experience. I've spent fucking thousands on therapists. I've spent hundreds of hours with a psychologist. I've taken SSRIs. I've been through it all. I understand. I'm speaking from experience. For most people, if you're someone who's watching this and you're thinking that because you felt a little bit anxious for a couple of months, you think that you need SSRIs, the likelihood is you probably don't need them. You just need to learn to deal with your feelings, face your feelings, and emotionally regulate yourself. Now, that's why I work with Andrew Keeler, my life coach, because he challenges me on my feelings. And I can say this now, I've been working with him for 3 to 4 months now, and I have never, ever, ever felt so fucking emotionally regulated and so comfortable with feeling anxious and so comfortable with the days where I feel a little bit depressed. Those feelings are completely normal. And the issue is, right, people get a little bit anxious and a little bit depressed and go, oh, like, I'm terrible, I've got anxiety, I've got depression. You don't. You probably don't. Like, realistically, if you feel anxious and you feel depressed, it's probably a symptom and not a cause. And what I mean by that is, if you're constantly sitting there on your fucking phone scrolling, most of you out there will be vaping, you're having too much caffeine, your diet's not particularly very good, you'll be staying up late, not sleeping very well, not exercising that well, like, you're going to feel anxious that way and you're going to feel depressed that way. They are symptoms of the lifestyle that you are living, more than likely. And like, look, you might be sitting here watching me going, I exercise, I look after my nutrition, but if you're sitting there still having fucking 4 or 5 hours of screen time and you're also, you know, potentially not going out and getting loads of sunlight. Or even the biggest one out of every single one of them is every single time that you get anxious or you get stressed, you run away from the feeling. And I'm talking about every single time that you get anxious and get stressed. Like, you get a little bit anxious about the fact that you feel a bit hungry, so you give into that. You get anxious about the fact that you don't want to go to the gym because there's people there, so you don't go to the gym. You get anxious about the fact that you can't have a conversation with someone, so you don't go and have that conversation with them. Like, you don't want to push yourself in any means of life because it's scary and it's uncomfortable. But every single time that you're on away from uncomfortability, even if it's a completely different scenario to your anxiety or your depression, like, even if you think it's unrelated, it's not. It's not unrelated. Every single time that you get anxious about doing something and you run away, you're then teaching your body that there is something to be scared of, but there's not. It's just a feeling. You have to learn to emotionally regulate yourself and be able to logically process these feelings. Like, say for example, I'm working with a client right now, right? She's a great girl, really, really good girl, right? She's doing really well so far. She's really anxious inside of the gym. But what we have to do is we have to logically break down what the worst case scenario is if she goes into the gym, right? So let's have a look. For an example, this is how we logically process. You're anxious in the gym, so you're going to start logically processing the actual situation because you need to deactivate essentially your fight or flight system and start to reactivate that frontal lobe and that conscious brain. Okay, so right, you're anxious in the gym. Let's have a look. What's the worst thing that's going to happen if you go to the gym today? Oh, well, I'm worried that someone's going to be looking at me while I'm exercising. Okay, what's the likelihood of somebody actually staring at you while you're exercising? Pretty unlikely, right? And if somebody does stare at you while you're exercising, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? I might feel a bit uncomfortable. Okay, cool. What's the worst thing that's going to happen if you feel uncomfortable? I'm going to feel uncomfortable. Okay, so what's the worst thing that's going to happen if you feel uncomfortable? Oh, well, nothing really. Exactly nothing. So, like, you need to learn to logically break down every single scenario where you feel anxious. Like, if you feel hungry, right, and you get anxious about the fact that, yeah, oh, I want this food, but I can't have it, blah, blah, blah. Like, right, okay, I'm hungry. What's the worst thing that's going to happen if I'm hungry? Well, I'm going to feel hungry. Okay, what else? What else is going to happen if you feel hungry? Oh, well, I might get, like, you know, a little bit, like, irritable or something like that. Okay, cool. Can you control your reactions to being irritable? Yes, you can. So we make the choice to react to those things properly. But, like, when you start to break it down, like, oh, if I get hungry, like, you're not going to die. It's not a disease. Nothing terrible is going to happen, but the issue is people don't think about how they react to these situations. You need to learn, and this isn't going to be something that you learn overnight, but you need to start learning to logically break down these things. Any situation in your life where you feel anxious or stressed, you just have to logically break it down. So what's the worst thing that's going to happen if this happens? What's the worst thing that's going to happen? Okay, cool. What's going to happen if that happens? What's the worst case scenario? And generally, once you start to break these things down, you'll understand there's nothing to be scared of. And I know this through having social anxiety. So I used to be scared of the fact that people were going to be thinking stuff about us. Like, I'm sitting here making a fucking half-an-hour YouTube video about my SSRIs when 2.5 years ago I couldn't even hold a conversation with a stranger. Because I learned to logically process. So, like, if I go, oh, that person over there might think something about me if we have a conversation. Okay, cool. What's the worst thing that happens if they think something about me? How does that affect my life? Well, it doesn't. So what am I worried about? It doesn't affect my life. What am I actually scared of? Nothing, but it's a subconscious reaction in your brain that you need to learn to break down. So the point that I'm getting to is that you probably don't need SSRIs. You probably just need to work with a fucking psychologist, or just learn to emotionally regulate yourself, however you want to do that. But if you're going to work with a psychologist, work with one that actually challenges you on your feelings and your behaviours and your beliefs. You don't need somebody to sit there and go, oh yeah, that sounds like anxiety, that sounds like depression. You know that, but you need somebody to actually challenge you. Like I said, I've had Andy saying this stuff to me all the time. Like, he will literally just say to me, like, what are you actually fucking afraid of? Why are you not doing the work? What's the worst thing that's going to happen if you get a bit uncomfortable? Nothing bad's going to happen. So, anyways, to recap the video, that's my journey with SSRIs. The moral of the story is, most people don't need them. Like, genuinely 99% of people do not need them. You just need to learn to emotionally regulate. There is nothing to be afraid of when it comes to your feelings. Your feelings will only affect your life if you allow them to. You just have to learn how to deal with them. Okay? If you're an adult, you need to learn how to be an adult and deal with your feelings, because the only reason that your feelings, your anxiety, your depression actually affect your life is because you are letting them do it. You have to learn how to react to them properly. That's my experience, and that's my 2 pence on the subject.